So welcome to Curb Your Cravings. I'm so excited to share this information with you. I want to make it really, really simple. So we're just covering two things. Understanding cravings. What the heck are cravings? Why are they so powerful? Why do they have so much control over me that I don't want them to have? I am with you. I have been there. I'm still there sometimes. So understanding cravings is so important. Understanding why they happen and what they are gives us a little more power over them. So that's point number one today. Point number two is three of many tools for dealing with cravings. It was one of the hardest things in the world for me to just pick three because I was certified as a life coach and a weight loss coach in the Life Coach School program. I'm also a coach certified by the International Coaching Federation. I've had lots and lots of training and self-study around various programs. But the tools that I learned in the Life Coach School program changed everything for me. I struggled with all kinds of cravings all of my life. They're also known as urges, which the Life Coach School calls them. And when I joined this program, I finally learned some of the tools that I had never heard before in 50 years, by the way, of struggling with all kinds of cravings and challenges and difficulties, living the way I wanted to live, as opposed to just letting cravings take over and run my life in some ways. And so I learned all these amazing tools and they really changed everything for me. And I want so much to share them with people. So one is understanding cravings. Two is 3 tools for cravings. But I really wanted you to know as I share that, because we have so little time together today, that there are many more that I could share with you. Okay. And I am going to offer coaching at the end, but if coaching's not for you, no problem. But if you feel like at the end of this, I want so much more, there is an opportunity for that. So I'll tell you more about that later. Big recommendation, and I'll give you a minute to do this. Please grab a pen and paper. Please take notes. Get the highlights. And what I'm going to give you throughout my talk is ways that you can learn more about everything that I'm sharing for free with podcasts. Okay, so is everybody ready with notes? You have a pen, you have paper, or maybe you have on your computer an open document. But if you're doing that, please make sure that you can see the slides and that you can see me as well as your document that you're typing into. Okay, so let's talk about cravings. Now, it's so fascinating to me that we all have cravings and that so many people wanted to come to a course that's just called Curb Your Cravings. I mean, right there, that should pretty much speak to everybody because we all have cravings. And really, we know this, but think about this. Think about why we have such strong cravings. Because really we're wired for them. We're wired for survival, right? That these cravings go back to a time when there really truly was food scarcity of the basic necessities to survive in life, right? So our brain has developed these mechanisms to give us a really powerful urge to, let's just say, eat. And we can talk about cravings for anything, but I'm going to use food as a primary example because we can all relate to it, right? So the craving to eat more food than our body needs to be healthy is understandable, right? We need to have compassion for that and understand the science of it because it goes back to our evolution before we had enough food to survive, right? As soon as we could get some, we had the craving to just eat as much of it as we possibly could in one sitting because it helped us to survive. So keep that in mind. It's science. It's not anything to be ashamed of or to judge, right? Now, why do we have such powerful cravings and stronger cravings for concentrated foods? This is another really important thing to understand about cravings. Hope you like my little spinning cupcake. Is it spinning? Oh, it stopped spinning. I'm trying out different features in my slides. So I like the spinning cupcake. So why is it that we would have a craving, an overwhelming craving, like that just feels like it's taking over our whole body for this cupcake, this chocolate cupcake with, I don't know what it is. It looks like strawberry frosting with a cherry on top. let's be honest here. Would you have a stronger, more overpowering craving for that? Or maybe vanilla is your thing, or maybe cake is your thing, or maybe a hot fudge sundae is your thing, than you would for a salad? Would you probably have a stronger craving? Of course you would. Why? Because foods like the cupcakes and the ice cream and the pizza are so concentrated. They are so condensed with, think about ground down flour and sugar and fat and butter, and all the things in these things are so concentrated. It's like a drug. It literally gives us this intense, incredible dopamine hit. When I see that, when I'm at that work event or at that party, when we go back to the real world, if you're still watching this in COVID, hopefully some people are watching this much later, and we're back in the real world where we're facing cupcakes and cake and all kinds of cheese and crackers and everything at all the events we're going to, right? This urge, this craving becomes so strong because of this evolutionary need not to survive, to thrive by eating as much as we can and as much dense, calorie rich, fat rich, concentrated food as we can, because we might not be able to eat for another 5 days, right? So that will absolutely result in our survival. That's the way our brains are wired. Just be aware of that. Look at this statistic, 99.99999% of our human history, we face the constant threat of starvation. This is one of the reasons why our cravings and our urges are so strong. Just be aware of this. Look at our brain. Look at your amazing brain. Everybody just touch your head right now for a minute and say to your brain, you are amazing. Thank you, brain. Thank you for all you do for me. Thank you for all that you do for me unconsciously. This is where we want to pay attention, to keep me alive, to keep me safe, right? When you're in the car and you're speeding on the freeway and the car in front of you stops short, your brain doesn't wait for you to tell it, oh, wait a minute, my life is in danger, I should probably hit the brakes. Your brain works on autopilot most of the time. And it's working on autopilot when you're indulging cravings. It's like, eat more, eat more, eat more, have more, go on Facebook more, get back on Facebook. What human need is that? Connection. We absolutely have a craving for human connection, right? Get on Facebook again or Instagram or whatever it is over and over, that compulsion, that urge that's so strong that we can't seem to resist because of the survival need for human connection. But it becomes a compulsion, and what we're operating within is this instinctive brain. When you look at this image of the brain, be aware, we're still on learning about what cravings are, right? That cravings are happening, or the big part of what's happening with a craving that makes it so overwhelming is that the instinctive brain, the old brain, the reptilian brain, the fight, flight, freeze brain, is in overdrive. It's hyperactive. It's screaming at us, eat another cookie, eat another piece of pizza, another one, or you're going to die. It's literally screaming in your subconscious. You're not probably hearing all of this or even aware of this. All you know is you cannot resist that fourth, fifth piece of pizza or third, fourth glass of wine, whatever it is, because you've wired a neural pathway into your brain that you've got to have it. Otherwise, you're just going to die. Now, you know, of course, with your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, you're not going to die. And sometimes it's very, very confusing, isn't it? When it takes over and you eat something, you drink, you spend 5 hours on social media or doing something that you know is not in your best interest, and your thinking brain after is like, why am I doing this? I don't want this. I don't want this extra weight, knowing I'm not healthy. I don't want to waste my time on this. I don't want to overdrink and feel foggy and hungover the next day. I don't want these things. Your thinking brain will remind you of that, but your old brain is taking over and has the power to get you to take that action because it's convinced and it's created this neural pathway telling you that you're going to die if you don't have that thing, whatever it is, right? Okay, so just be aware of this. So someone has written in the chat an excellent point. I'm going to stop and address this, saying, my brain doesn't say that I'm going to die. My brain says it won't hurt me. I deserve it. And it's a social construct that I shouldn't eat sweets. Okay, let me address that. And let me also say that I'm going to give you 3 tools for curbing cravings. The third tool really addresses this. I really want to come back to this comment. Remind me if I don't come back to it, because the third tool addresses this so much, which is what we choose to think about what we eat. Okay. Your brain is screaming at you that you're going to die. Your brain is, because it's in your subconscious. We're talking about the instinctive brain, which is just fight or flight. It's eat the food, eat the food, eat the food. And there is a neural pathway in there that's connected to that old brain, and the strong message in there that you have to do it, right? Because there is a physiological experience as well. There's a dopamine hit. You know that just like with a drug, when you eat high flour and sugar, you get a really strong dopamine hit that you just don't get from eating healthy fuel foods. And so it's overwhelming. Your brain wants more. It wants you to have it more of the time. It wants you to have more when you've had some, and it wants to keep pushing you to have it. Now, these thoughts that you're having, that you're aware of, what you're talking about is something totally different, which is what's happening in your thinking brain. Your prefrontal cortex is having thoughts about food or whatever, or alcohol, or whatever it is you crave, that you don't really, let's just clarify. If you're fine with what you're doing, you're absolutely fine with your weight, your energy level, your health, your where you're putting your mind and your energy and your thoughts. If you're perfectly good with it, then you don't have to do any of this, right? But if you would feel healthier, if you weighed something different, if you would have more energy, you think, if you would be able to feel better in any way, or live more of the life that you would like to live in any way, then these concepts are really what is needed more than, and I promise you, diets have a dismal success rate. And I was on every single one. I'm a lifetime Weight Watchers member. I've been on everything. Terrible success rates, because people do it for a time and then they go back, right? Because they haven't rewired the brain. So your brain telling you those things is part of this whole brain process to fuel continuing the same behavior over and over and over. It's your old brain saying you're going to die if you don't do it. It's your thinking brain saying you deserve it, you deserve it. All of this is working together to keep us in these habits and these patterns that we know aren't what we really want for our greater good in our lives. So this is a lovely quote from Deepak Chopra. If once we understand how our brain works and that it's compelling us to engage in these behaviors that we know are not for our greater good, and there's no shame in it, there's no judgment in it. It's a compulsion because it feels like it will make us feel good, it will keep us alive, and it will give us pleasure. I mean, that's really, we're doing it for the pleasure as well, because we know that there will be a pleasurable experience, but it's the negative impact of that pleasurable experience that we may not want to continue experiencing, right? So we have to believe what Deepak Chopra is telling us here in this slide, that with self-awareness, we can move out of that old brain thinking, or that old brain automatic reaction of just giving into the craving, those well-worn pathways of, I see a cupcake, I eat a cupcake. I see a pizza pie, I eat the whole thing, right? Whatever it is, there's something in between that can intervene, and we can rewire those neural pathways, and we can change fixed unconscious habits. And if any of you feel that it's too late for you, or it's too hard, or you've never been able to do this before, please know that I did not do this until I was 50 years old. My weight went up and down. I've been up and down about 45 pounds. I know that may not seem like much to some. For me, it took up a lot of mental energy and emotional energy that I'm so thankful and so grateful that I can free up for other things. Even when my weight was what other people would think was normal or healthy, I was suffering. I was constantly worrying and stressing and beating myself over what I ate or what I didn't eat, or what was I going to eat or drink later. it's so freeing not to have that stress all the time. That's what I want for you. That's what I want for everyone. And there's no judgment in it. There's nothing bad or good about any of this. Please, please believe me that, in the folks I coach, people I do weight loss coaching with, there's no judgment, and the opposite. There is nothing but compassion and understanding and trying to help and support creating these new neural pathways as we learn what they've created for us. Okay. So I don't see any questions. I'm going to move into the tools, which I'm really, really excited to share with you. All right. Hang on one sec. Okay. Before we move into the tools, I want everybody to pick up their pen and paper, or get ready to type on your computer. Hopefully, if you're typing on your computer, I hope that you have enough of a window that you can see the slides and you can see me and you can see your paper, but please get ready. I want you to write a couple things. First of all, I want you to write what you most crave. What is the thing you most crave that you feel leads to a result that's not really what you want? It could be a food. It could be alcohol. It could be, sweet plantains. It could be cookies. It could be cake. It could be cheese and crackers. Some of us are, I'm a savory person. So for me, it was always like, I could not stop myself with cheese and crackers. It could be a behavior such as a habit. It could be smoking. It could be anything. It could be overworking, social media, anything at all. I want you to write down and be honest about what it is. And now I want you to write what your goal is in that area. Okay. What is your true goal for yourself? It could be a weight. If it's a weight, just make it a number, and it doesn't have to be anybody else's number, and nobody has to know your number. But what is that number that maybe you've never been there, so you don't know, but you guess, just an educated guess, like, yeah, I think I would feel pretty healthy and energized and great at this weight. Okay. If it's alcohol, right? So maybe it is, for me, I used to overdrink quite a bit. Now, this is a whole other realm of the difference between being an alcoholic. I'm absolutely not an alcoholic. And again, no judgment. If someone is, I am a huge fan of 12-step programs. My coaching program and what we do is not for addiction and alcoholism or, things that should be assisted by programs like Overeaters Anonymous, 12-step programs, right? But there is such a thing as overdrinking, which simply means you're drinking more alcohol than you really want to, and you're experiencing negative effects, and you don't necessarily want to give it up, but you want to get it into the range, and that's up to each individual to decide, right? There are so many programs. I never did anything like it, but I've heard of a program called, and I'm not advocating for it, but as an example, a program called Moderation Management, where I believe they advocate for no more than 9 regular size alcoholic drinks a week. I don't know if that sounds like a lot or a little to you, but there are actually programs helping people like just pick how much alcohol they want to drink and stay with that. Because if you want to drink 2 drinks at a party when you go to a party and you drink 4 instead, it's the same thing we're talking about here, because your brain is firing away like, this is so pleasurable, this is so great, it must be something that you should do for survival. Remember, it's not that you're consciously thinking that, it's just that you've wired the pathway that it feels so pleasurable. That's why our brain's telling us that we have to keep doing it or we're going to die, because the things that our brain believes we have to keep doing or we'll die are pleasurable. So we're telling ourselves, oh, just do it because it feels good. Just do it because you deserve it and it's pleasurable. But what that's triggering in our old brain is, see, pleasure, you've got to have it or you're going to die. Okay. So you've now written, what is this thing you crave? And what is your goal with it? Your goal may be to eliminate it entirely. Your goal may be, let's say it's pizza. Your goal may be to only eat 3 pieces of pizza in one meal. If it's alcohol, your goal may be to only drink 5 alcoholic drinks a week or 2 alcoholic drinks a week. Here's the thing, and this is what a lot of people don't realize about the kind of coaching that I do and that I learned in both the Life Coach School and the International Coaching Federation. The client gets to choose their goal. The coach does not choose for them. You absolutely get to choose your goal. And the only thing we hold you accountable for is that you like your reasons for the goal, that the goal isn't self-punishing. The goal isn't because someone else thinks that that's what your goal, a spouse or someone else thinks that that's what you should do, that you've chosen it and you love it and you're happy with it. And then you're going to make it happen for yourself. That's how we do it. And that's what I just asked you to do. And that's what I would like for you to apply these 3 tools to that we're going to go over right now. There are so many opinions about choosing a weight or not choosing a weight. And I see the value in all of them. And I think you should do whatever works for you. You know what? If choosing a weight didn't feel good for you, choose it in some other way. I'm a big fan of SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And there's all different ways to define SMART. So I may have used one of the ways of defining the acronym that's different from what you've heard before. But specific and measurable helps us to really visualize what we'd like to get to. Some people choose to just visualize like their body, what their body might look like or what they might feel like in terms of energy levels. If you want, if health and weight is something you're working on. In the Life Coach School, they do encourage us to weigh ourselves. And they say what we want to do is not be emotional about the weight and just see it as data. It's just data. Like I'm eating these things, I'm on this plan, and that leads to this number weight. And there's no emotion around it. There's no judgment around it. It's just scientific data that we shouldn't have to be afraid of. But that's one philosophy. If not tracking weight and just tracking in some other way how you're feeling works better for you, that's great. Or visualizing some other goal, that's great. But I'm a fan of specific measurable goals. So that's just going to depend on what works for you. And if I had a coaching client that didn't want to have a goal weight, that would be totally fine too. I would just say, okay, how are we going to measure? Maybe it's how your clothes feel, or how are we going to measure what feels like success for you by your own measurements? All right, tool number 1, the physical hunger scale. Here's where I'm going to give you, take your pen and paper. I want to give you lots of great resources to get more on this, because what I'm giving you is like high level, like 3 bare bones, skimming the surface intro to 3 amazing tools that have worked for me personally and for the clients who I coach on Cravings, and also who I coach on other topics as well, because these tools are transferable to other realms of life and goals as well. The physical hunger scale comes from the Life Coach School, and you can always listen to Life Coach School podcasts. I would write that down, the Life Coach School. There are many on weight loss, on dealing with urges and cravings, on stopping over drinking. Look for those. But I recommend here my personal coach, Dr. Deb Butler, who has a podcast called Thinner Peace in Menopause and Beyond. And okay, I know some of you out there are not in menopause and never will be because you're men, but so just ignore the menopause part. It really goes over the physical hunger scale and so many amazing weight loss tools. But the reality is that I am in menopause, and that when we're in menopause, it just does physiologically become harder to lose weight and to keep it off. So she really helps women at that stage, when it can be at the hardest point, to be a healthy weight for whatever that is for each person. She has great tools adapted for that, but the tools apply for anyone, regardless of gender, age, any of it. So here's the physical hunger scale. It's really simple, but can be so hard. I needed so much support and coaching and accountability for using this. So just know that. But you'll get it right away. It's not hard to understand, okay? The physical hunger scale teaches us that hunger can be measured, again, being smart and measurable, right? Goals and things we're working on. Hunger can be measured from -10 to +10. -10 is you're starving. You just, I mean, really starving. Like you must eat or you're going to faint, right? To stuffed. I don't know if I've ever been a +10. Like this is like Thanksgiving dinner, probably for a lot of us. If you're in the US, sorry if you're not in the US, you have to unbutton your pants and you can barely move and you're just completely stuffed to your limit. And then there's everything in between, right? So working with the hunger scale when I coach people is one of the biggest tools we use, because most people, believe it or not, are totally out of touch with their hunger scale, have no sense of their hunger scale, because they're eating when they're not hungry, because they feel like it's time to eat or it's mealtime, or they're starving themselves all day and not realizing they're like -7 or so, and they're just dying and not feeding their bodies, which their bodies need fuel, right? And just not aware, because they've tried all these extreme things and they're so out of touch with that natural. This is what we're born with. This is what kids do, right? It's very rare to see kids keep eating after they're full. They're like, I'm ready to go play. I fueled myself, right? Kids tend to get this pretty natural for the most part, with some exceptions. So the idea of the hunger scale is that we want to eat between -2 and +2. What that means, as you can see on the slide, is that we start eating when we're just a little bit hungry. Think about this. How many of you have had the experience of being starving and you plan to eat this nice healthy salad or sandwich or whatever the meal is, right? And you cannot stop yourself. You eat it and then you eat 5 more because you were so hungry. You had allowed yourself to become so starving that that nice, light, healthy meal that you had planned to have is not going to be enough, right? On the other side, this is the harder part, is we're actually meant to stop eating when we are sated, not full. When we are satisfied, we are satiated. We've had just enough to fuel our body. This is the trick. And this is really, really hard. And when people start using the physical hunger scale to only eat within that window, that self-awareness that the quote from Deepak Chopra mentioned earlier starts to begin to happen. It's like, oh, wow, I was eating when I wasn't hungry, and I was eating to a +4 or 5. I was not stopping when I had had enough, right? Or I was starving myself so that I would eat so much more. I was letting myself get to a -5, -6, and then I couldn't control myself in terms of what I ate. So our culture doesn't teach us to eat in this moderate way, where we eat when we're a little hungry and we stop when we're just satisfied. Everything we see around us is like extra large, supersize it, finish your plate, right? There's starving people in the world. You get to have this, you should have it. But this is actually the way we're kind of built to eat a little bit and fuel our bodies, and then go on and do other things. And then amazing thing happens. A few hours later, we're hungry again. We get to eat again and eat until we've had enough. And then it keeps happening over and over like that. But so many of us have gotten so far afield from this because of, again, cravings. And yes, it does have to do with what we're eating, but that's outside of the scope of what we can cover in just looking at 3 tools. Think about, if you do nothing else, think about if you just did this hunger scale. Now, I've shared this with people who say, I only eat 1,000 calories a day and I'm 100 pounds overweight. I don't understand how that happens. I really don't, but it's possible. It's possible. So if you started food journaling and using this physical hunger scale, I would be so curious to see what happens, because for the vast majority of people, for thousands of people I now know who are certified life coaches in my program and who we've coached as coaches, have all lost weight this way and have all gotten to a healthy weight. And to the point of someone who said, why, I don't know about picking a number. Funny thing is, I didn't actually pick a number when I did this work. I did not pick a number either. I just did this work. I started learning the hunger scale. It was so hard. I did not stick to it by any means for a while. But I started doing this. I started food journaling. The thing about the hunger scale is if you combine the hunger scale with a food journal, and if anybody wants to coach with me, you have to do a food journal. I know I hate it. Everybody hates it. But you've got to be honest with yourself and your coach about what you're really eating and drinking and putting into your body. And a food journal combined with the hunger scale, I mean, those 2 things alone are pretty guaranteed. I would estimate like at least 80% of the people, because I realize there really are physiological differences and health concerns and issues that people have that make this harder, or that maybe make it impossible. So know that I recognize that. But for the vast majority of people, those 2 things, and I would recommend coaching, would do it, right? Brooke Castillo, who's the founder of the Life Coach School, who came up with everything I'm talking about today and is a phenomenal coach and weight coach. She's a little more tough than I am, by the way. I love the way she is, and it worked for me. But she has a quote that, this is her quote, Brooke Castillo: "Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, the rest is drama." And she says, if people just did that, like a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the population would be overweight. And we know that the vast majority of people are overweight in the United States, at least. So something's happening there that we have to pay attention to. Again, no judgment on this, but just awareness, okay? So the questions to ask yourself if you want to use the hunger scale: how hungry am I on a scale of -10 to 0? If you're way up there, you've probably waited too long, okay? I want to say something. This is beginning weight loss, and I think some of you are very advanced and have tried many things. And I am also a fan of intermittent fasting, by the way, and I do intermittent fasting, but I could not do it in the beginning when I was losing weight. I needed to work with the hunger scale, and I needed to eat when I was hungry. I could not go without eating if I was hungry, and it's perfectly fine to be there. I just want to say that. And that's what this hunger scale tool is for. It's for beginning the process to get a true sense of when you're hungry, when you've had enough, and to ask yourself to really be aware of that. How hungry am I and how full am I? And there's another piece of this, which again, I'm not covering here because we don't have the time today, but in coaching we cover, which is called the emotional hunger scale. It's the same scale, and it asks you, when you eat food, where are you emotionally? -10 to +10. Usually when we overeat, we are feeling negative feeling, and we're eating the food to comfort that feeling. When we're at a +2, we've been satiated, we've had a healthy meal, and we go and eat to 6 or 7, it's usually, not always, but for a lot of people, we're eating for emotion. We're eating to comfort ourselves. We're eating to soothe negative feelings and experiences, and that's understandable. I have done that countless times in my life and can understand that, right? But we just want to be aware of that, okay? Or because we're thinking, I deserve it, this doesn't matter, but really it does, because we want something else in the bigger picture. Okay, tool number 2, allowing urges and the urge jar. Take a breath, everybody. Giving you super high level. Remember, if you want more, come to me for more or go to the podcasts, the Life Coach School podcast, Thinner Peace podcast. Okay. This is my jar. I have 2 jars I want to show you of my own. This is my jar of 100 marbles. Whoops. And this is my urge jar. I like to put stickers on my urge jar. My stickers say, never give up and you've got this. And I still use my urge jar regularly. So I am in this with you, friends. And I'm going to tell you what the heck that means. But I have to start with the 3 ways we deal with urges. So a craving and an urge, I'm using them interchangeably. If you define them differently, know that when I use them, I'm using them interchangeably. So the 3 ways that we deal with an urge: 1, we just give into it, right? Let's say this was vodka, right? I was like, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. But this whole thing of vodka is sitting right here, and I'm feeling stressed or something's going on, and I do it. I can't take it. The urge, the craving is too strong. I drink the vodka. It's not, it's water, of course, but just trying to give a visual. Okay. So that's the first one. The second way, and this is what people mostly do on diets, on restrictive programs, is called resisting the urge, using willpower, white knuckling it. No, this is what people do when they say, I won't have it in the house. I'm not going to go to the party because they're going to have these foods there. And I just can't, I want to resist, right? It's resisting. Resistance is not sustainable. We will give into it eventually. So for instance, I was coaching someone and she was like, oh, I wasn't resisting. I was not having it and I was doing fine. And I went like a couple days and then I had it. What that is a combination of resisting and indulging. If you indulge in it eventually, even though you said you weren't going to have it, that's indulging, and you resist it up to that point. It's not the resisting, all that resistance is not what we want. That's not success, because it's so painful and so difficult. And we're still always going to have the urge. The third option is allowing the urge to be there without resisting it and without giving into it and having the thing. My friends, this is one of the hardest things to do as a human being. Remember that your brain is screaming at you that you're going to die if you don't eat the donut, if you don't have the glass of wine with all your friends who are having the glass of wine, if you don't go on Facebook to see if you got more likes. Your brain is screaming at you that you're going to die. You're not going to have enough to survive. You're not going to have human connection. And even your thinking brain may be giving you all kinds of thoughts about you deserve it, you should have it, it's not a big deal, right? So resistance doesn't work. Someone just said resistance is the best catalyst to overindulge. It is so true. That's what I was just trying to say. You said it better, is that when we resist, we usually give in, and it's still giving in, even if it's 5 days later. Guess what? Even if it's a year later, I have lost weight and suffered and been in pain and wanted desire so strong for that thing that I wouldn't have, and gave in finally after a year and went back up. That's still in the two realms of resisting and indulging, no matter how long you can put it off, because that neural pathway that's desiring it so strongly is still there and alive. You're just fighting it. Whereas with allowing it, you actually close that neural pathway off and create a new one. It's totally, totally different. This is neuroscience. This is not a fad diet. This is not eat a shake in a bar. This is eating normal food. This is eating when you're hungry, stopping when you're satisfied, but also adding to that, when you have an urge for something so strongly, allowing yourself to feel it. You may cry. You may realize that you're feeling sad because you're isolated, because of COVID, because there's something going on in your life. Right? You may realize that you were in a social situation where you felt uncomfortable and you just wanted to excessively drink to feel more comfortable. All of this is okay. It's okay to feel. It's not going to kill us. This, again, the brain is saying, don't feel these things. Don't feel these things. You'll die. Feel good. Feel pleasure. Feel good all the time. Have another drink. You'll feel great. Go shopping. So what? You can't afford it. Buy another $500 pair of shoes. It's the same thing. Okay. Allowing the urge means sitting with it, going deep inside and saying, oh, this is hard. I want that. I want this vodka so bad because I know it will make me feel so good. And not lying to yourself and saying that it won't make you feel good. You can admit it will make me feel so good. But your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain knows, even though it will make you feel so good in the moment, in the long run, your higher self has a different end goal of not feeling fuzzy tomorrow. Eating that 5th piece of pizza, of course it tastes amazing and it feels amazing in the moment. But your longer term goal is to feel good in your clothes and to feel healthy and light and energized and whatever that means for you, right? So allowing the urges is one of the hardest things to do. It took me months to learn how to do this. And I did intensive work with a coach, one-on-one, weekly. And I realized that all these years, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, every grapefruit, every diet I had done, I was using resistance. I had never allowed my feelings to actually be there. I had never actually allowed and fully felt an urge and let it go through me and feel the discomfort and the pain and the suffering of it. My coach, Dr. Deb Butler, calls it the river of misery. It is miserable. And anybody who tells you you can lose weight and totally change the way you eat and live in your body, and it's going to be super easy and you're never going to feel any discomfort, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but I would not give them a penny of your money. Okay. It's hard. And that's where the urge jar comes in. Okay. Little tricks for the brain. The urge jar is Brooke Castillo's invention, and I love it. Okay. And what it is, and you can listen to episode 263 to get a lot more on this. what it is that you have your urge jar, right? And you have your marbles. And okay, so I really, really want this vodka. I want to drink all this vodka because I'm going to feel so good and comfy. Or I really, really want this donut. I should have had a plastic donut, you know, even though I'm already full, I'm not even hungry, and it's not on my plan. I'm not even talking about your plan, but we need to have a plan for what we want to eat. And you get to choose, right? Whatever your plan is. If the donut's not on your plan, first thing we do is allow the urge. Oh, this is so hard. I want it so bad. I want it so bad. I feel it. I feel it. It doesn't mean you have to get it out of the house. I mean, if you can, I would never say never to anything if something works for you. But this is not what tends to work for people in general, right? Once you've gone through it, and typically for a lot of people who I've coached on this, like 10, 20 minutes later, sometimes an hour later, it's gone. Have you ever had that experience? Like you think you have to have something so bad, you must have it, but you allow the urge, or you do something, or you distract, whatever. We're not supposed to distract in this program, but I've done the distraction thing. I have, like, I'm going to do something else until this goes away. Once you allow the urge, you feel it, you cry, you feel whatever you need to feel, you get to put a marble in your urge jar. And guess what? The theory is, and it's not really a theory because thousands of people have used it now. They were giving away these urges in the life coach school. When you get 100 urges, you get 100 marbles in your urge jar. They claim, and I believe, that the neural pathway has been largely diverted, and the urge becomes much easier to allow. It's retraining your brain, rewiring your brain by allowing the urges to be there, feeling all the way through them, rewarding yourself by doing it, for doing it, right? So I had a few in here. I use this for all kinds of things. Sometimes I use it for work, even if I'm obsessed with a work project and I know I'm ready and I'm done and I want to keep overworking on it. I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to work on this for an hour every day this week and no more. And when I get that urge to go work on it more, when I know I don't really have to, but I'm just doing it out of insecurity, thinking I'm not going to do a good enough job, I use my urge jar even for that. And I put a marble in when I've fully allowed, and so many feelings come up. It's rough. I know it's rough. Look at this example. I want to show you a real life, real person example. Okay. This is one of our friends from the life coach school who posted on, I think it was Instagram, her urge jar, right? And she said the things that we teach in using this program. I do not shame myself for eating off my plan. I use the urge jar as a tool. I think about what I can do better. I use it to help me not overeat, right? I came home from work. She says, I had an urge. I wanted to eat food that wasn't on my plan, right? This is a trigger to overeat when I don't want to. Instead, I heated up my planned food. She felt the feelings. She continued with her plan, felt whatever she needed to feel, and gave herself that marble, or you can use whatever you want to put in your urge jar as a reward that I allowed an urge. I didn't indulge and give into it. Okay. All right. The third tool, and many of you know this. I know who's out there. I know everybody who's out there. So most of you know the self-coaching model. So I'm going to go over it super quick and just say you can get so much more. The very first episode, way back from, I think, 2014, when Brooke Castillo started her podcast called The Life Coach School, the episode number 1 is on the self-coaching model. And it's based on many, many other approaches to behavioral change. And it's absolutely in alignment with cognitive behavioral therapy. And it says that there's a fact out in the world, whatever it may be. We have a thought about that fact. That thought creates a feeling. The feeling drives an action, and the action creates a result. And that this is a beautiful awareness tool to see what we're creating in every area of our lives. And that unintentional models are those thoughts going around and around in our minds that keep creating the same feelings and generating and driving the same action. So the best way to understand it is an example. Here's an unintentional model. Let's say for someone, let's say it's me, I weigh 250 pounds. That's actually a neutral circumstance. It's just a fact. I probably have all kinds of thoughts attached to it, but it's just a fact in the world, right? Let's say my thought is, oh, I'll never be able to lose this weight. I've never been able to. I never will be able to. What emotion does that thought create? Sadness. Now, What action does that sadness likely drive me to take? Eating for comfort, right? I'm thinking all these negative thoughts, I'm feeling negative feelings, I'm sad, and then I want to eat to comfort myself, of course. The result, my weight remains 250 pounds. So the results in our lives become evidence that we use against ourselves to keep thinking the same thoughts. When I become aware of my unintentional model, I can change it and create an intentional model. Same circumstance, I weigh 250 pounds. What if my thought, and you can't just change your thought in an instant, by the way. This is not magical thinking. You've got to work on this. Like, I wasn't able to really change my thoughts until I worked with a coach, until I did a lot of writing, until I really, really became aware and did deep work on this. But let's say I'm able to, with a lot of work, start believing the thought, I can be a healthy weight if I'm consistent with a healthy, enjoyable eating protocol. That's the biggest tool really of my weight loss program, which we're not talking about here, but you can guess, right? You pick your protocol, you pick what you eat. You have things you eat, you have things you don't eat. You have amounts you eat, you choose. But that's what gets, I mean, that is ultimately the biggest thing that gets you to wherever you want to be in terms of your physical condition. And all these tools support that, right? So if you could change to this thought that you'll stick on your plan, you feel determined, you stick to your plan, and you get to a healthy weight over time. And that weight may or may not be a certain number. It may just a feeling that you know when you're there. Okay. So that is the self-coaching model. And we use that a lot. And it doesn't always have to be used for positive feelings. It's a perfectly fine tool for just being aware of what you're thinking and feeling and how your thoughts are creating your feelings and your actions. Even if you find that they're negative and you want to keep them, you just want to say, okay, well, now I'm aware of it, and I choose to keep doing it this way, and I want to be here, and that's totally fine. Your coach never gets to choose that. No one else gets to choose that, and no one should ever judge anyone for that. Okay. So thank you all so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed learning about why you have cravings and 3 really powerful tools for curbing cravings.